But to balance that out, I'm going to welcome on the stage Allie Langhor, Rentsync's Vice President of Client Services, to talk about all things creativity and lease-up marketing. Allie leads our dynamic team that manages our apartment marketing services for all of Rentsync's clients. This includes digital marketing, website design, creative development, technical support. She also doesn't live here. She works a million hours a week, but she definitely wanted to be here and chat with you all. So please, warm welcome for Allie Langhor.
All right. Thank you, Giacomo, and thank you all for being here today with us. My name is Allie, and as Josh mentioned, I'm going to be talking about creativity in lease-up marketing. So these 7 steps are going to take us through this presentation. But before we dive into the details, I want to make the point that even though I'm about to show you where these fit on a chronological timeline, they're really all very interrelated. There's a lot of overlap and a lot of back and forth going between them. And the thing that kind of helps cut through the chaos and bring us consistency and stability throughout the process is number 1 here, our friend branding. So we're going to talk a lot about branding in this presentation. Now I also have our 7th step, optimization, kind of out on its own here, because even though it is an important step after a lot of this stuff has been finished, it's also something that's going to be happening at every step. So along the way, I'll also give us some optimization tips on each of these steps. So diving right in, this is the lease-up marketing timeline. It's separated into 2 sections. We have pre-leasing and leasing. And all of the time markers here are referring to your first occupancy dates or when you have your first move-ins. Now, a lot of people will ask me, when should we start our lease-up marketing planning strategy? And many are surprised to learn that we actually recommend that starts 2 years out from your first occupancy date. And at this stage, you're going to be working on your name for the property and your branding. This is going to be what guides you through every other step. So it is very important that you do start early and give your team and the creatives that you're working with enough time to actually build this out in a way that's going to perform for you throughout the lease-up period. About a year after that, you're going to be launching your registration page. So in between that, you're planning your digital marketing strategy and putting together the registration page. And at the same time, you're going to launch your digital ads. This is going to help you build a list of quality registrants very early that you'll be maintaining touch points with throughout the process and using once you move into the leasing phase later. Third, we have marketing collateral. Now, this is also going to come into play usually much later when you're bringing people into the leasing experience in building. But you also should be using some of this earlier, like through your construction hoarding or any signage you're putting up on the site or around the neighborhood. So this is a good time in between launching your registration page where you're working on your full website, your digital marketing strategy following that full website launch, where you have some time to focus on your marketing collateral. About 3 months out from occupancy, you're going to be launching your full website. And you'll notice that this moves us into the leasing period. We're going to talk about the elements that go into a full community website and the difference between that and registration, but you're also going to be ramping up your digital ad spend significantly at this point, so you can start actually engaging with your prospects, moving them to take action, and signing leases. About a month after that, you could start much sooner, you're going to be working on retargeting and e-blast. So this is where we're going back to our registrants that we've had for a year now, as well as reaching new audiences and making sure that your most current messages are the ones that are being promoted and seen. And finally, we have optimization. Now, like I said, this is happening at every stage, but this is really what's happening at the end of all of this. It's all about optimization from there and making sure that the strategy that you set up is actually working for you throughout this period. So a couple of us have made the point now that we like to go out and talk to our clients. We like to get feedback directly from them. We like to talk to our users. We also like to talk to renters. So we use this data for a lot of different ways here, but we do have access to a ton of renters through the rentals.ca Infinity network. So we pulled 5,000 renters for this presentation, asking them questions specifically about apartment branding and how that affects them and their decisions. And this was done for the Roadshow. So you all are the first audience that are going to get access to these insights. So one of the first questions we asked is whether people agree that they are more interested in apartment communities with unique or memorable names versus generic ones. So a generic one would be like naming the building after the address or some of the more common names that you see with apartment naming. Only 37% said that they agree that unique names are better. 34% had no strong preference, and 29% said that they preferred the generic naming over something more unique and abstract. So what does that mean when you're choosing a name? It means that the name itself is not the thing that's resonating with renters and allowing them to choose whether or not they're going to be moving into this building. So when you're determining what name to choose, you can take inspiration from a number of things: the property address, the location, the history, an abstract idea. You do want to keep your target demographic in mind, even though the name is not necessarily the thing they're going to connect the most with. You don't want to choose a name that's going to end up isolating any of your key audiences or reaching one more than the other. But the other thing this means is that the name is really an opportunity for your team to set a guidepost that's going to lead you through the rest of the lease up. So you almost want to choose a name that resonates more strongly with the marketing team and the internal stakeholders as much as you're considering the external stakeholders. So this means have fun with it. At this stage, you can start teaching your team how to get the creative juices flowing, and that's going to flow them through the rest of the branding process and the lease up process. So if I've just made the point that the name is not necessarily the most important thing, you might be asking, is brand really all that important? Well, the answer, of course, is yes, it is. 3 out of 4 renters agree that brand is an important factor when choosing where to live. And only 6% completely disagreed with the statement. Another 65% of renters said that they were more attracted to an apartment community with a strong brand, and only 12% disagreed with this outright. So really, fundamentally, apartment branding is no different than any of the other brands that you see and interact with every single day. A brand serves multiple purposes. It creates a unique identity that allows prospects or consumers to differentiate your product from those of competitors. It builds trust, credibility, and loyalty. It establishes an emotional connection between the product and its consumers. It communicates a value proposition that allows consumers to make an informed choice about, in this case, where they want to live. And most importantly, it serves as the foundation for your marketing, communication, and operations throughout the entire life cycle of this building and the lease-up process. So how do you create a brand for your apartment building that is going to achieve all of those things? Now, I think there are 3 key steps to this. The first is the marketing team on your end should realize that this is a creative, collaborative, and laborious process. It's not going to come together overnight. And while your marketing team might not be, designers, they should be able to communicate the things that the designer needs to know to build a brand that's going to represent what they want this building to feel and what they want that value proposition to be to future residents. The other important thing, and this happens a lot, is you can't lose sight of the conversations that are happening on the construction side. Now, like I said, this is happening about 2 years from first move-ins. So the building doesn't really exist yet. In most cases, you maybe have an exterior rendering, maybe some paint chips or samples of things are going to be in the building. But as I'm sure a lot of you or all of you know, that changes quite a bit over the life cycle. So what happens when your marketing team isn't in the loop on these conversations? Ultimately, the brand that they're creating with the creatives is going to be disjointed or misaligned with what the building ends up being. So keep all of those conversations part of the branding conversation as well. The third thing here is to keep your target audience in mind. Ultimately, you're building a brand to connect with your target audience. So even though I'm telling you to be creative, also be careful to balance your preferences over what's going to appeal to your target demographic. And working with experts will allow you to get a better insight into what your target demographic does align with or does identify with. And they can kind of help you balance, your preferences, your creativity with what's actually going to resonate. So our first optimization tip here is that you need to allow your brand to evolve. So even though when you're finished, you should have a solid brand with all of the messaging, tone, brand assets, creative, all of that ready to go. But don't think of that as the end of your brand. Using Amazon here, this is a really good example. So you can see how many redesigns they went through in just the first very early years of their company. Now, obviously, Amazon as an e-commerce platform changed quite a bit during this time, so it kind of makes sense that they had to go through a lot of brand refreshes. But when you look at the first logo and the last logo, at first glance, it might seem like these are not related at all. But to me, I think they're completely related. In all of their branding, they've always had this sense of like a pathway cutting through chaos, or something starting at one point and ending with the end user, the users that they want to relate with. And they kind of figure this out with the logo that they have now, where they represent that they have all of these products from A to Z. They add that little arrow to the line that they've been using this whole time, symbolizing their ability to provide that service or get that service directly to users quickly. And it also creates that little smiley face. So it's a nice kind of touch to the brand that suggests that they are friendly, customer-centric, that they want to provide and expand in ways that benefit their consumers more so than anything else. So I'm not suggesting that you have to do logo redevelopment at any point during your lease-up period. You probably should never have to do that. But I am saying that once you start getting feedback from prospects, you want to take that feedback seriously. Maybe you're going to mute part of the brand that isn't resonating with them. Maybe you're going to lean more heavily into parts of the brand that do resonate with your target audience. Or maybe you're going to add new things based on that feedback you're getting. But whatever you do, just make sure that this isn't happening outside of the brand or it becomes disjointed from the brand. Let it evolve and let people be able to see that evolvement from the first iteration to the last. Okay, so now we launch our registration page. And this is going to be showcasing your brand from every corner. The key elements of a registration page, and remember you're launching this about a year out from first move-ins, are a simple navigation, some info about the building, renderings, whether you have external and internal, any other media that you have. You want to be posting construction updates to make people, let people know what's going on with the property and make sure that they can see that the project is progressing. And of course, registration forms. And you want to make that very easily accessible. And you also want to make sure that that form tells people once they register what to expect next. So whether that be through an autoresponder or a success message that just lets them know when they can expect the next touch point to be, that's very important. So everything is kind of brought together by content. Content is so important because you've just gone through this creative process of branding your property. You have all of these different brand assets. They might mean a lot to you, but they're brand new to your users. So you need content to explain why the logo relates to the renderings, why that relates to, the location, the neighborhood amenities that you're spotlighting. You need to connect all of these things through content to really sell the story to your target prospects. Now, a little optimization tip here. You're launching a registration page on a brand new domain. It's a brand new website. You're not going to rank on search engines. This is why you also need to launch your digital ads right away when you launch your registration page. You kind of cheat your way to the top of search engines. But the other thing is that in order to help build your SEO value, you're going to want to be publishing content to that registration page very frequently. And so I said construction updates is a great way to do this, but also things like amenity spotlights, neighborhood features, other things through a blog format or other posts on your website that are going to just help continuously sell the property and make sure that people who are signing up for updates at the 1 year mark are actually being updated enough along the way to still care a year later when you start leasing. So as I said, you're going to be launching your digital ads at the same time. So a question that I often get is, where should I be advertising? And some of my colleagues are going to be going into these in a little bit more detail, but I'll just give a general overview now and the sort of order of operations that you should follow. So number one is going to be your rental listing sites. You're going to want to be on every major listing site in Canada. You're going to want to max out any promotional tiers that they have so that you can make sure that you're maximizing your visibility. And the other thing about rental listing sites is that they're going to give you a very healthy and steady stream of leads throughout the entire length of your lease-up period. And they're also going to be very high quality leads because of the search filters and the amount of choice that people have there. They're really able to kind of compare and contrast and choose exactly what they're looking for. So these are high quality leads. And for that reason, we would call this step essential. The second is Google Ads. So as I said, the kind of immediate benefit of this is that it starts building traffic to your website, which you don't have on a new domain. The other thing is that this is going to be one of your highest lead volume drivers. Now, the quality is going to vary a little bit because your reach is expanding so much beyond a rental listing site. But if you're working with experts, they'll know how to tailor the ad copy. the creative, the keywords, the budget, extensions that you're using, everything that you need to make sure that you're maintaining strong quality leads throughout the time. And you have a lot more ways to not manipulate that, but improve your chances of reaching quality prospects if you're working with experts. So in this case, the step is also essential. Now, the third is social media. This is becoming a lot more popular lately, but one thing I really like to emphasize is that with listing sites and Google Ads, you're reaching people when they are actively searching. They have just typed in, I'm looking for an apartment, I'm looking for 1 bedroom, I'm looking for these amenities. They're ready to take action. With social media, you're reaching them passively. They're either scrolling their phone after dinner, before bed, on a break at work, and they're not necessarily looking at taking action in that moment. So for that reason, these aren't going to be your main lead drivers. Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, they're not going to do much in terms of lead volume. You are definitely going to get leads from them, but it's not going to be the major difference between meeting your leasing goals or your lead goals or not. But what these are great for is brand awareness. So we just put all that work into our brand, and this is the place where you really get to showcase that brand. So there's substitute pieces or complementary pieces to your rental listing site ads and your Google ads. And so for that reason, social media is highly recommended. Now there are a few other options outside of this, of course. 2 that we really like lately are, we allow people to send targeted e-blasts to users of rentals.ca in the network that allows you to target people who have inquired on similar properties in similar locations within the last 30 days. So not your hugest lead volume when compared to number 1 and 2, but very quality leads as you're only talking to people that are interested exactly in what you're offering. Another great thing is media articles. So this is where you really allow your brand to shine in a different way. When people are interacting with your ads, your website, your marketing, they're seeing things from your perspective. But if you work with somebody to write an article that it takes a more news approach, they're seeing things from another perspective. They're seeing all the work that went into choosing the location, choosing the way that the building is built, the aesthetics, everything that goes into it. You get to quote some of the people that were involved in the project. And they start to see this as a living thing more so than just something that is being marketed to them. So this is recommended usually for larger developments where that extra awareness and perspective is really useful. Little optimization tip here. Obviously, optimization is the name of the game with digital advertising. It's a constant stream of optimization. And again, when you work with experts, they're going to teach you how to read the data and the performance metrics that you're getting back and apply those back to campaign optimizations. This is not something that you can just set up and forget about. It's something you constantly have to be working on. Marketing collateral. So as I said, this is something that you're going to start working on now, but it's going to be likely used later on to kind of bridge the gap between the digital experience that prospects have had with interacting with your property and now the experience in the office when they tour the property or engage with your leasing agents down the line. So these include things like marketing floor plans, flyers and mailers, property brochures, presentation folders, and branded merchandise that you can give out to prospects during tours to kind of help them keep your property in mind and start aligning with that brand. And also, they're really great to throw into welcome packages when people move in. Because if you've really sold somebody on your brand, they'll become brand ambassadors for you. So if you give them merchandise that they'll actually want to walk around with, that's sort of free advertising for your property. Optimization tip here, because this is a step for print marketing, a lot of people think that you kind of do it once and then forget about it. But just be aware that you might have to go back and make revisions. Again, this is happening pretty early. So there may be new information or things that you want to highlight, new services, new partnerships that you've made with other businesses in the community. And you want to make sure that your most current message is always being represented. So make sure that you don't treat print as something that you do once and then forget about. Now it's time to launch our full website. This moves us into our leasing period, and it's about 3 months out from your first move-ins. So the key elements of a full community leasing website is you've moved on from just renderings and information, the sort of coming soon messaging, where you're now prompting people to take action. So you have to have this site completely filled out with a navigation, multiple CTAs. Usually we recommend an on-page inquiry form, the ability to book a tour from the website itself, and the ability to apply online. You want to highlight the features and amenities and give yourself the space to really talk about the ones that are most consistent with the brand message and that you want people to mostly be excited about and align with. You're going to want to add virtual tours and real images. Take out your renderings and add real images of the property. Neighborhood info, of course. And then more general information about the property as well. So you want to elaborate now that it's a living, existing thing on the details of that property. And then finally, the suites. So this is obviously the most important thing. This is the first time that you're releasing floor plans and pricing. So you need to make those suites very easy to find, very easy to navigate, and you want to include as much information about them as possible so you can help people connect with the exact home that they want. And a little optimization tip here. Again, going back to SEO, we've been building this up since the registration page, but we really want to continue that game of adding new content constantly. So adding new content to the website, especially to the homepage, helps you with ranking better on search engines because it shows that the website is actively being edited and used and someone is, paying attention to it. But it's also going to, again, just keep building that brand messaging and allowing people to connect more and more with the property as this content comes out. So I want to take a moment to highlight a feature that is becoming increasingly prominent in the apartment marketing industry. So we asked whether renters feel that branding affects their perception of the quality or the lifestyle offered at a building. And not surprisingly, 76% of renters said that it does, and only 5% disagreed with this statement. Now, if we're talking about lease-up marketing, we're talking about new builds, which probably means that your new build has a lot of the elements that renters of today are expecting. It probably uses a lot of smart technology and advertises that. It probably prioritizes security and convenience. And so anytime you can use tools on your website or in any of your marketing that mirror those expectations, you're, again, affecting the perception of the quality and the lifestyle. You're sort of telling them that the building is advanced, secure, convenient, without having to say those words to them. So something like a floor plan navigator allows prospects to visualize themselves starting from the exterior of the building, moving into the floors, and right into individual units, allowing them to check off all their boxes along the way and find their perfect home. So by the time they come into the leasing office, they don't just know that, maybe they want to live here. They know if they want to live on the 12th floor in the corner unit, this particular layout. And if they can't get the 12th floor, they have their two next choices ready to go. The other thing Rentsync has done with our floor plan navigator is we've recently helped people bridge that gap between the online experience and the in-office experience with our point of sale tool. So this allows leasing agents to bring this tool in office, use it as something that's part of the touring process to help cut down on tour time and again, help people connect more quickly with the home that they're going to ultimately want to sign a lease to. And this is not something that's new to shopping experiences. Especially in a post-COVID world, people increasingly want their online shopping experiences to mirror their in-person shopping experiences. So think now, a lot of the stores that you go to, you can just go right to a computer, just like you would be searching online, find the product you're looking for, find the exact placement on the shelf, go buy that, you're in and out. But you have the physical copy immediately rather than waiting for it to be delivered online. Other stores you go in and the staff are using tablets and they're doing the same type of thing. A lot of restaurants do that now too. They're ordering off a tablet for you or you're ordering off a tablet just like you would be ordering online. So this expectation it exists. And so being able to bring it into the apartment marketing world is a great way to connect with consumers and align with things that they're already aligned with outside of this particular experience. The other last great thing about this is that it's not just a very cool marketing tool, which it is, but this is also where you kind of move from having cool marketing tools into tools that actually help with revenue management. So with Rentsync's Floor Plan Navigator, we offer insights, which give you real-time, unit-level insights into what prospects are looking at. So you can see if they've clicked on particular units, the unit types that are the most popular, whether people are downloading floor plans, whether they're looking through the galleries, the virtual tours, all of these things that are going to help you optimize your leasing strategy on the fly by making price adjustments, maybe determining when to release a certain number of suites, or whatever it might be to ensure that you're always putting your best foot forward during your lease-up process. This also allows you to collect valuable insights for future lease-ups. So if you find that a particular floor plan was sort of ignored through this process, and you're going to be working on a development in a similar location with a similar target demographic later, you can use that information to determine what types of suites you're going to put into that building and what's going to resonate with that audience going forward. All right, our final steps here, we're into retargeting and e-blast. I've grouped them together because they're happening at the same time, again, about a month after your full website launch. These ensure that you never lose touch with your prospects, all the way from your registrants to the people that you've reached once you launch your increased digital marketing campaigns, to any new audiences you're reaching through your brand awareness campaigns, your search, and your listing sites. These are going to be one of the places where you can really, really showcase your brand. So it's important to use branded creative in these so that every touch point you have with your prospects, that brand is always represented and they're not seeing sort of generic ads that kind of make them lose that connection. These are also the best way to bring new messages to those audiences. So if you're having a promotion, an open house, an amenity is opening, you can use these to reach people, again, passively, which will allow them to go back to the things they've shown interest in before and probably take further action now that they know something new is happening. And you don't have to worry about them kind of doing that on their own and going back to their website to check. Optimization tip here. Best way to bring new messages to existing audiences, as I said. Okay, so we've gone through the steps of the lease up. We've saw how brand can take us through all of those steps and how consistency is so important. But how far can brand really take us? Can brand get prospects through the door? Can it get them to sign a lease? Can it get them to pay more than expected or budgeted? So we asked renters whether they agree that they are more likely to take a tour or request more information about a property if they resonate strongly with its brand, even if the building is somewhat out of their budget. So I'm interested in what you think. By show of hands, how many people think more renters agreed to this statement than disagreed? Agreed. Okay. You guys are correct. 56% of people agreed with this statement, 21% completely disagreed with this statement, and 23% didn't really have a strong opinion on it. How many of you think more renters agreed to this statement? I haven't avoided an apartment building because of its branding. All right, a little more agrees. I think we're catching on. Yes, 51% of people agreed with this statement. Only 26% disagreed, and 23% had no real strong preference. So, in most cases, brand can get prospects through the door. Even if something was a little bit out of their budget, it's at least going to be enough to drive them to take action, to get more information, and that information is going to help them determine if they actually want to make this purchase or this big move in their life. We couldn't get them to sign a lease. We asked whether people agree that the branding of an apartment building is more important to them than other factors like location, price, and amenities. Who thinks more people agreed with this statement? Okay, we're starting to find our limitations. Most people did not agree with this. 26% of people did agree, 56% disagreed, and 18% had no strong feelings one way or the other. So for many of us, this is probably not surprising. I'm sure there are brands that we like out there that offer products a bit out of our budgets. And so even though we align with the brand and we enjoy it and we want to be part of it, it's not always within our means to do so. How many people think more renters agreed with the statement, I have chosen an apartment building because of its branding? 36% of people agreed with this statement, 32% disagreed, and 32% had no strong feelings. So our majority of answers here do agree or do suggest that brand is a major deciding factor, if and only if price, location, and amenities align with their expectations as well. So sometimes it can get prospects to sign a lease. Remember, there were 26% of people that said that they would sign a lease, or based on branding, even if the pricing, location, and amenities weren't what they were expecting. So in some cases, yes. But we can't count on it to sign leases. This teaches us that your brand has to be an accurate representation of the property. So if you're going to market your property as affordable, amenity-rich, and start bringing prospects in, you're just going to lose them out of your pipeline when they realize that the reality doesn't match the marketing. So marketing can get us and branding can get us the prospects through the door. Some cases it can push them to sign a lease, but statistically, brand is a deciding factor, but not the driving factor. in people signing leases. All right, the big one. How many people think that more people agreed that they'd be willing to pay more for an apartment building that aligns with the brand they identified with? 30% of people did agree with this. Only 29% disagreed, and 41% were kind of on the fence. So in a sense, 1 in 3 renters are willing to pay more for a brand that they resonate with. But imagine that 1 in 3 person moves into the building and the brand that they had bought into does not align at all with the experience that they're having living at that property. This is where you end up with bad reviews, upset tenants, and people moving out immediately after their first lease term ends, which is only going to prolong your leasing period and prevent you from reaching stabilization. So again, this goes back to the idea that your brand must accurately represent not just the amenities and aesthetics of the property, but also the lifestyle and the quality and the service that they have, that they experience living there. Final question from this. We asked what people think are the most important brand aspects of an apartment's brand. And we didn't really dive into the individual parts of branding. We kind of just talked about branding overall. So I'm kind of interested to see what you guys think really resonates with renters from a branding perspective. Quick show of hands, who thinks it's logo? Okay, brand colors. Fair. Typeface. Cool. Content. Nice. Consistency. Awesome. And other. Okay, you guys are smart. The number one answer was content. And so this is why I talked about this a lot during the presentation, because again, a lot of this brand, the assets and the creative is going to make a lot of sense to you who's been thinking about it and working on it for 2 years before people are seeing it in its fullest form. And it's content that's going to connect all of those dots for people and really sell what you're trying to sell. So a lot of people kind of phone it in on the content section. I think that content writing is a skill. I mean, all of us are capable of writing, but writing good content is a skill that has to be practiced and developed. And so if we think of this as a creative process, this is how we're going to move away from some of the very common slogans that we see all the time in apartment branding, like elevated living in the heart of this neighborhood. You know, people are used to seeing that stuff now. And so the more you can move yourself away from statements like that, the more you're going to achieve a brand expression that's going to resonate more and allow your property to be viewed as distinct from other properties. Consistency is the other thing. So consistency means that you don't have to have a big, in-depth, loud brand. When people think brand, especially because I brought up the Amazon example, I'm sure a lot of you are thinking of these, kind of major brands. But that's not the case. You don't have to have something that's completely in-depth, or, have all of these different brand assets and all this stuff planned out. You just have to be consistent. So you have to have, right from the naming process, you have to have that message that's going to drive you through this entire process. It needs to be consistent. It needs to be understood, because if it's not for you, then it's certainly not going to be for your target audience either. So I'll leave you with a few final takeaways. Brand needs substance. Brand needs assigned meaning, and it needs you to assign that meaning to it. And then it needs you, as marketers, for the marketers in the room, to constantly reinforce that meaning, however you can, in all of your marketing communications, and remember, your operations. This is really no different than anything else that we interact with every day. Whether you buy a new phone, or a sweater, or a pair of socks, or a car, you're pretty much aligning yourself with a brand, or you're choosing that based on what the brand is promising you. So in this sense, brand really is your product. And this is the most important thing for marketers to realize. This goes beyond filling vacancies and generating cash flow. Increasing brand value actually increases the value of real estate. That's really cool. You guys get to actually impact the value of this building that's going up as marketers if you're able to create a strong brand and promote it consistently in your marketing. So make sure you build a brand that will be irresistible to your target residents. My name is Allie. I love talking about branding and lease-up marketing, so feel free to jot down my email. And happy to answer any questions or talk to you guys anytime about this stuff. Thank you so much.
Okay, so what are some cost-effective ways to implement creative marketing during lease-ups? I know that we work with a lot of budgets on the client services team. So what do you say to somebody who maybe is a little more cost-effective?
Yeah, I made this point a little bit towards the end of the presentation. When I talk about brand in this way, again, people are probably visualizing brands that they like are they know very well and spend a lot of money on their marketing and on building their brands and branding their merchandise, whatever it is. But less important than spending a ton of money on your branding is being consistent with it. Again, it was content and consistency that people really cared about. It wasn't the name, the colors, the fonts that you're using. It was just the expression of the brand. So you don't have to spend a ton of money if that's not within your budget to build this very robust branding system. You just have to make sure that it's principled, it has a message, and that you're consistently reinforcing that message. The other thing is I really pointed out the value of e-blasts and retargeting campaigns, display ads, social media ads. These are pretty cheap to run. A lot of them are, you pay when someone clicks. And because the value of this is in the brand awareness, if someone doesn't click, but doesn't mean you didn't get value out of that. They still saw your brand. They still saw your message. And that's going to drive them, maybe they don't click in that moment because you've reached them passively, but when they're ready to take action, they're going to remember that and they're going to go back and interact. So there's a lot of very cost-effective ways to build brand and represent brand without completely blowing the budget.
What's that saying? Don't remember what you said. Just remember how you make you feel.
Exactly.
It's that simple statement that kind of is universal here. Potential risks of taking a highly creative approach and how can we mitigate them? Is that something you do? You have chats with your clients on intro calls or do they bring up risks at all?
Certainly, yeah. So that's actually a very interesting question because you don't really think of investing in brand as a risky move. But I think it's it comes down to having a balance between creativity and reality. So sometimes when we work with people, they have a lot of ideas, and especially if they're not, designers or they don't get to work on creative projects very often, there's a lot of energy, there's a lot of ideas, and there's a lot of things that are kind of driven by their own personal preferences. So I really tried to hammer home, you have to keep the target demographic in mind. You have to, be aware of your budgets, be aware of your overall marketing strategy, be aware of your building. Don't let what you want to represent be so disjointed from the reality of your product that you're just going to fail, even though you put all this attention into branding.
Yeah, I remember we used to have conversations when we would chat with brand new clients as well. And you'd ask them, who are you looking to reach? And they would sometimes just say everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's not necessarily the best case. And I think it's just kind of weeding it down a little bit more to kind of the bare essentials, almost thinking of a simpler way to, come up with that persona. And I think that's what's interesting because you always want more. Everyone wants to be on top of listing sites, top of Google. They want everyone to see it, but you're actually saying it's a little bit more of, that actually opens you up a little bit more for some risk.
Totally. And that's why I also said that the branding process is creative, collaborative, and laborious because often you kind of, the ideas that you start with is, we want to appeal to everyone, but that's not going to be successful. So the more you kind of talk through this, the more you go through iterations of choosing your logo and, perfecting that messaging, you're actually going to draw out a lot of things about who you want to talk to that maybe weren't in their brains when you start the project.
Now, I know just anecdotally how much you love logo design and the process of it. So we have a question here about what's involved and how do you distill a brand into a logo? Because it's, I didn't really realize the Amazon logo that was A to Z. It's almost like when you tell them, yeah. How do you do that process where you try to distill a building into a logo? And maybe sometimes do you ever have an instance where someone just talks to you about their building and you're like, they gave me nothing.
Yeah.
Now I got to go and kind of come up with something. So how does that process go?
Yeah. So the way we do it is we start with a discovery call where we kind of just download information to us. So everything that you know about the property, every opinion you've had, every conversation that you've had or that your stakeholders have had with you, we just kind of get all that down on paper. And then we start trying to organize things into concepts, especially if we're starting with naming. We'll start to, as I said, kind of put things into 3 columns. And then we end up coming up with these concepts that we're going to follow throughout the branding process. From there, you start applying styles to those concepts. You think about who those concepts are resonating with and what they're going to be appealed to or attracted to. And then from there, you go to designing the logo, which is a long process, and it often takes a few iterations, and the feedback needs to be very, specific and use very particular adjectives, because a lot of times people are just we want something classic or timeless or modern, which is great, but the more specific you can get with your feedback, the more quickly you're going to get to a perfected logo. So yeah, iterations of the logo. And then once we have a logo chosen, typically at that point, we have had conversations about colors and typefaces and, stock imagery and all those other things. And then that's how everything comes together at the end to build the brand guidelines. And then that kind of becomes the Bible that people are using throughout the rest of the process. And I like this question as well because I talked about brand so much, but I almost never talked about logos specifically. A lot of people think that logo equals brand, but if you've understood me over the last 45 minutes, you'll see that like a logo or any one single asset of brand is not the brand. It's this totality of all of these things coming together. And then it's the way that that's being expressed that really becomes the brand.
Plus, it's kind of like fun for the clients to have like, by the way, this is going to be kind of collaborative, like we're going back and forth, but it's going to take a little bit of time, but it's kind of rewarding for them and kind of gives them like, hey, this is kind of your design as well. So I think that's kind of a rewarding side for them as well that I know it can be a little laborious, but this is actually kind of fun because it's time for you to bring your input and then we just do what we do best and that's kind of bring it to life. So I think that was great. We had a ton of photos taken, tons of notes being written. So we appreciate that. I think that's all the questions that I had. So I think everyone deserves to hear a big round of applause. That was really great and we appreciate it a lot, Allie.
Thank you.